"Look at this junkyard special," Officer Troy Harker sneered, his voice carrying sharp as broken glass across the street. He swung his cruiser door open with a flourish, stepping out like a performer onto a stage. His sunglasses gleamed, his grin widened, and his words sliced through the air with practiced cruelty. Pedestrians slowed, their curiosity pulling them toward the scene. Two teenage boys lingered on the sidewalk, eyes widening with anticipation, phones already out. They knew what was coming. Harker had a reputation. He didn't just enforce the law, he humiliated. And today his target sat waiting in an old sedan that had seen better decades. The car idled at the curb, faded paint chalky under the afternoon sun, bumper scraped, muffler rattling faintly with each shudder of the engine. To most, it was just another tired vehicle limping through city streets. But to Harker, it was opportunity. To him, that sedan screamed weakness, it screamed poverty, and he fed on that. Inside the car, Darius Cole sat steady, hands resting plainly on the wheel, his posture calm, his eyes focused forward. He didn't flinch at the laughter, didn't shrink under the red and blue glare flashing in his rearview mirror. His face was quiet steel, the kind of composure that makes mockery echo louder than intended. The city around them was alive. Heat rippled above the asphalt, turning the air into shifting waves. Car horns blared in the distance. A bus hissed as it braked at the corner. Children's voices carried faintly from a nearby park. But on this stretch of road, time thickened. Every sound was drowned beneath the weight of Harker's sneer. "Well, well," Harker drawled, circling the front of the sedan, his boots striking the pavement with deliberate rhythm. "What do we have here? Grandpa's car still on the road?" He tapped the hood twice with his knuckles, a metallic thud echoing down the block. The boys on the sidewalk snickered. One whispered, "Yo, he's roasting him," and the other doubled over laughing, camera pointed directly at the scene. Darius's expression didn't change. His silence wasn't surrender. It was something else, an armor Harker didn't recognize. The officer leaned closer to the driver's window, bending slightly so his grin hovered just inches away. "Tell me, pal, what's a grown man like you doing in this piece of junk? Can't afford anything better?" The disrespect rolled off his tongue with deliberate weight. Every syllable meant to sting. Darius turned his head slowly, his eyes meeting Harker's through the dark lenses. His voice, when it came, was even. "Is there a reason you pulled me over, officer?" The question was calm, simple, but it needled Harker's ego. His smirk twitched wider, covering his irritation. He wasn't used to targets talking back with composure. "Reason?" Harker repeated mockingly, leaning an elbow on the roof. "Yeah, I'll give you a reason. This heap is practically a traffic hazard. Surprised it made it down the block without falling apart." The boys howled. One of them muttered, "Man, he's killing him." Darius's jaw tightened briefly, but his tone never shifted. "It gets me where I need to go." Harker barked out a laugh, sharp and loud, tilting his head back. "Sure it does. Probably gets you laughed out of every parking lot you pull into." The laughter from the sidewalk doubled. Phones tilted higher, recording. What for Harker was a show of dominance, for them was cheap entertainment. Darius remained still, his hands steady on the wheel, his eyes unshaken. Harker leaned closer, his voice dropping so only Darius could hear. "Men like you, driving cars like this, you're easy to spot, easy to stop, easy to put in your place." Then, louder again for the audience. "License and registration. Let's see if this rust bucket's even legal." The words hung heavy, humiliating. The teens on the sidewalk whistled and cheered. Inside the car, Darius inhaled once, slow and measured. Then, with calm precision, he said, "Of course, officer. My license is in my wallet. Registration's in the glove box. May I reach for them?" Harker smirked, tapping the roof again. Yeah, just don't strain yourself." The boys laughed once more, one muttering, "Yo, he's savage." Darius's hand moved carefully towards the glove box. He opened it slowly, retrieving a folded set of papers. For just a second, as the compartment swung wide, something else caught the light. A sliver of black leather, the faint glint of metal. Harker's eyes twitched, catching it, but he dismissed it with a scoff. Nothing important, just junk, like the car. Darius handed over the papers calmly. His face remained unreadable. Harker snatched them with a grin. "Darius Cole," he read aloud, savoring the name with deliberate disdain. "Well, Darius, let's see what secrets your little ride's hiding." The boys on the sidewalk laughed louder, one of them calling out, "Yo, he's done for!" But inside the car, Darius stayed calm. Patient. Watching. Because he knew this was only the beginning. Inside the car, Darius stayed calm. Patient. Watching. Because he knew this was only the beginning. Officer Harker leaned against the sedan's roof, waving the license like a trophy. His smirk widened as he glanced toward the sidewalk. The boys were still recording, one holding his phone high, the other whispering between bursts of laughter. Harker thrived on it. The audience, the performance, the chance to turn power into spectacle. "Well, Mr. Cole," Harker said loudly, so the teens wouldn't miss a word, "this old bucket of bolts tells me something about you. Tells me you don't belong on these streets. Tells me you're probably up to no good." The boys cracked up. One muttered, "Facts," through his laughter, phone still trained on the scene. Darius's eyes stayed forward, his posture unshaken. His silence wasn't weakness, it was discipline. But Harker didn't see discipline. He saw an easy mark. "You know," Harker continued, circling the car like a shark, "cars like this don't belong in this part of town. People around here, they work hard. They drive something decent, not scrap metal." He rapped his knuckles against the trunk, the hollow sound echoing down the block. "What are you doing here, Cole?" "Trying to blend in?" Darius spoke evenly, voice calm as ever. "I was on my way home." Harker crouched down slightly, lowering his voice just enough so only Darius could hear. "Home? Where's that? Some rundown apartment complex? Some corner of the city we try to clean up every night?" His smirk stretched thin. "Let me guess. You work a dead-end job and this is all you've got to show for it." Darius didn't answer. Not because the words didn't sting, but because they weren't worth his energy. His silence was armor. That only made Harker push harder. He straightened and raised his voice again for the audience. "See, boys?" He gestured toward the teenagers. "This is what happens when you don't aim higher. You end up like this. Grown man, driving something held together with duct tape and hope." The teens roared with laughter. One nearly dropped his phone from shaking so hard. The other shouted, "Say it louder, officer." Darius's jaw tightened, but his face remained calm. His patience was being tested, stretched thin by each insult, but he refused to give Harker the satisfaction of a reaction. "Step out of the car," Harker ordered suddenly, his tone sharp. Darius turned his head, meeting the officer's mirrored sunglasses. "For what reason?" Harker smirked. "Reason? You look suspicious. Car like this? Could be stolen? Could be hiding something? Maybe drugs? Maybe weapons?" He leaned in close, his voice dropping into a sneer. "Guys like you are always hiding something." The boys on the sidewalk went quiet for a moment, sensing the tension shift. Phones still up, but their grins faltered slightly. Darius's voice cut through the silence, firm but calm. "You have no reason to pull me out of this car." Harker's smirk wavered, just briefly. The calmness in Darius's tone unnerved him, though he covered it quickly with a chuckle. "You've got some nerve talking back." "Fine. Sit tight then. Let's see what your little glove box is really hiding." He waved the papers in his hand like a banner and strutted back toward his cruiser, chest puffed out. The boys chuckled again, though less enthusiastically now, their whispers quieter. Inside the car, Darius exhaled slowly. His face remained still, but his mind raced. He had been patient, enduring every taunt, every insult. But patience has limits, and he knew the moment was approaching when silence would no longer be enough. At the cruiser, Harker leaned into his radio, voice smug. "Dispatch, I've got a possible suspicious vehicle here." Driver looks jumpy. Old beater car. Might be worth a closer look. The dispatcher's reply crackled back, flat and disinterested. "Copy that, Harker. Run the license." Harker typed lazily at his computer, glancing back toward the sedan. His smirk lingered, tugging at the corner of his mouth. "Let's see what Darius Cole is hiding." The boys on the sidewalk hadn't moved. One zoomed his camera in, whispering, "This is gonna go viral." Harker noticed and grinned wider. He lived for this. The audience, the attention, the false sense of control. Adjusting his belt, he stepped from the cruiser again and strutted back toward the sedan like a man walking onto a stage. Darius didn't move. His calm was steady, his stillness deliberate. And that stillness only seemed to irritate Harker more. He leaned down once again, his grin sharp, his words venomous. "Enjoying the show, Darius? Because trust me, it's about to get better." But deep down, he had no idea who the real show was for. Harker's grin sharpened as he planted one hand on the car roof and rapped it twice with his knuckles. "All right, Cole. Let's have another look at those papers." Slowly. The words dripped with authority, but they weren't commands anymore. They were a performance. The boys on the sidewalk leaned closer, one whispering, "Here it comes," while the other steadied his phone, recording every second. Inside the sedan, Darius inhaled once. Slow. Steady. His hand moved to the glove box again, deliberate in every motion. He pressed the latch. The compartment swung open. And that's when it happened. The registration papers sat neatly on top, exactly where he'd left them. But beneath, nestled in the shadows, was something Harker couldn't unsee this time. A black leather badge case, edges worn smooth, a faint metallic emblem gleaming under the sunlight that filtered through the windshield. The glimpse was quick, no longer than a heartbeat, but it was enough. Enough to crack the mask of arrogance. Harker froze. His smirk faltered. His eyes twitched behind the sunglasses as if they didn't trust what they saw. Darius lifted the papers and handed them over, calm as ever. His gaze never wavered. His patience never slipped. He closed the glove box with the same steady composure, like nothing had happened. But something had. Harker's fingers trembled as he took the papers. His voice, once booming with false confidence, wavered. What's that?" Darius's tone was quiet, measured. "You already know." The boys stopped laughing. One lowered his phone a fraction, glancing at his friend. The thrill was gone, replaced by something heavier, something sharper. They could feel it in the air. The shift, the danger of silence. Harker cleared his throat, forcing a chuckle that came out brittle. "Some kind of replica, right?" A souvenir? Can't be real. Darius didn't answer. His silence was louder than denial. Harker bent closer, his voice dropping, desperate. You think you can fool me with a toy badge? You think I don't know the difference? But his words betrayed him. He did know the difference. He had seen enough badges in his life to recognize authenticity. And the one glinting from that glove box wasn't a toy, it was federal. His hand gripped the papers tighter, the corners crumpling in his fist. Sweat prickled at the back of his neck, soaking into the collar of his uniform. The boys exchanged uneasy glances, their phones lowering further. This wasn't funny anymore. Darius finally spoke, his voice steady, sharp. Satisfied? The question landed like a gavel. Final. Unyielding. Harker stumbled back a step, his boots scuffing the pavement. His smirk was gone, replaced by the hollow stare of a man who had overplayed his hand. His arrogance drained out of him in seconds, leaving only panic behind. He tried again, stammering. Why didn't you say anything? Darius's eyes cut through him. Because I wanted to see how far you'd go. The silence that followed was suffocating. The boys shifted uneasily, the weight of the moment pressing on their chests. They tucked their phones into their pockets, no longer eager to capture what had become a humiliation too raw, too real. Harker's throat tightened. His sunglasses, once a shield of confidence, now looked like a mask too heavy to hold up. His authority, once displayed for show, had collapsed in front of the very audience he craved. And Darius hadn't raised his voice once. Inside the sedan, the calm presence of the man he had mocked only amplified the truth. This wasn't just any driver. This wasn't just some man in a beat-up car. This was someone he should never have crossed. The badge in the glove box wasn't just a piece of metal. It was power. It was proof. It was the end of Harker's performance. And it was only the beginning of his reckoning. The badge in the glove box wasn't just a piece of metal. It was power. It was proof. It was the end of Harker's performance. And it was only the beginning of his reckoning. Harker's chest rose and fell too quickly, his confidence unraveling thread by thread. The swagger in his stance had evaporated. His fingers, still clutching the registration papers, twitched like they couldn't decide whether to hold tight or let go. Darius Cole's voice broke the silence. Calm. Steady. You thought this was a game. Harker's lips parted, but no words came. You thought humiliation was entertainment, Darius continued, his tone as even as it had been all afternoon. You thought your badge gave you the right to strip me of mine. His eyes held Harker's, sharp as glass. But what you failed to realize is that power doesn't come from arrogance. It comes from truth. The boys on the sidewalk shuffled nervously. Their phones were gone now, stuffed into their pockets, as if even recording this moment felt dangerous. They exchanged uneasy glances, their earlier laughter hollow in their throats. Harker finally managed to speak, his voice trembling, desperate. I didn't know who you were. Darius's gaze sharpened, cutting deeper than the words themselves. That's exactly the problem. Harker swallowed hard. His smirk was gone, his mask shattered. All that remained was the man beneath, sweating, scrambling, exposed. Darius reached calmly into the glove box once more, this time not for the papers but for the leather case itself. His movements were deliberate, precise. He set it on the dashboard where the sunlight struck it full, then opened it with a flick of his thumb. The emblem gleamed. The lettering was clear. Federal. High rank. Authority that dwarfed the man standing outside the car. The sight hollowed Harker's chest. His throat closed. His sunglasses slipped slightly down his nose, revealing wide, terrified eyes. You're federal?" he stammered. Darius's voice carried like thunder wrapped in silk. "Assistant Director, Department of Federal Investigations." The boys gasped audibly, their faces blanching. They had expected a show of cruelty. Instead, they had stumbled into the aftermath of arrogance meeting its wall. Harker staggered back a step, then another, as if the badge itself had shoved him. His mouth opened and closed like he was drowning in air too heavy to breathe. His voice cracked. "Sir, I didn't mean—" Darius's hand lifted, calm but firm, silencing him instantly. "You meant every word." His voice sliced through the air, low but commanding. Every insult, every laugh, every ounce of mockery. That wasn't an accident. That was who you are when you think no one's watching. The street was silent now. No laughter, no whispers. Only the hum of the old sedan's engine and the weight of exposure hanging in the air. "You judged me by the car I drive," Darius said, his tone cutting but even. "You decided what kind of man I was without ever speaking to me. And you believed your badge made you untouchable." His eyes narrowed. "But tell me, Officer Harker, what does your badge mean when it exposes nothing but arrogance?" The words struck harder than any raised voice. Harker winced, shoulders sagging, sweat dripping down his temples. For the first time, he looked small in his uniform. Small in the shadow of a man who hadn't needed to raise his voice once. The boys shifted again, their earlier excitement now guilt. They had laughed at the wrong man, sided with the wrong power. Their eyes darted to Harker, then quickly away. Darius closed the badge case slowly, deliberately, like the final note in a song. He set it back in the glove box and shut it with a click. Then he turned his steady gaze back to Harker. "Now you know who I am." The officer's voice broke as he whispered, "Please. I didn't know." Darius's reply was simple, devastating. "That's what makes it worse." The silence stretched long, the lesson hanging heavy in the air. Harker's chest heaved, his arrogance stripped bare. The boys lingered awkwardly, unsure whether to stay or flee. And through it all, Darius Cole remained exactly as he had been from the beginning. Calm, composed, unshaken. The turn was complete. Harker stood frozen, his swagger stripped away, his silence louder than any of his earlier taunts. The badge on the dashboard might as well have been a mirror, forcing him to see himself for what he truly was. Not the confident enforcer he pretended to be, but a man exposed, trembling in his own shadow. Darius Cole sat steady, his hands resting on the wheel, his presence calm but commanding. His voice broke the silence, low and deliberate. Respect is the simplest thing a man can give, but it's the hardest thing to earn back once it's lost. Harker shifted uneasily. His sunglasses, once a mask of arrogance, now slid down his nose, revealing eyes filled with panic. His voice cracked. "Sir, I didn't mean—" Darius's head turned slightly, and his gaze cut sharp as steel. "You meant every word. You meant every laugh. You chose to use your badge as a weapon, not a shield. And you thought humiliation was a form of power." The officer flinched. The boys on the sidewalk didn't dare move. Their earlier amusement soured into shame. They exchanged a glance, one whispering under his breath, "He's done." Darius continued, his tone calm but unrelenting. "What you said wasn't about me. It was about who you are, about what you see when you look at a man who doesn't fit your idea of worth. You saw an old car and assumed weakness. You saw a black man and assumed less. That's not law enforcement. That's prejudice with a badge." The words landed like blows, each one cutting deeper than the last. Harker swallowed hard. his throat dry. He tried to form an apology, but the weight of truth pressed his tongue into silence. Darius leaned back slightly, his posture never breaking, his composure steady as stone. "I didn't tell you who I was at first, because I wanted to see who you'd be when you thought no one important was watching. And now I know." The boys shifted uncomfortably again, their earlier eagerness to record now replaced with the quiet guilt of bystanders who had cheered the wrong side. Darius's voice softened, but the softness carried a deeper sting. "Authority without respect is hollow. Power built on mockery crumbles the moment it's challenged. Remember that the next time you put on that uniform." The silence was thick. The only sound was the faint rattle of the old sedan's engine and the distant hum of city traffic. Finally, Darius reached forward. He closed the glove box with a slow click, as if sealing the moment. His hands returned to the wheel, steady, deliberate. He didn't need to say more. The lesson had already been delivered. But he did add one final line, quiet yet devastating. "Respect everyone you stop, because you never know who's sitting behind the wheel." With that, he started the car. The engine growled, worn but steady. He shifted into gear, signaled, and pulled smoothly into traffic. The faded sedan moved with dignity, leaving behind the flashing cruiser and the man who had thought humiliation was his weapon. Harker stood frozen on the curb, his face pale, his chest heaving. His badge, heavy on his chest, no longer felt like protection. It felt like exposure. The boys drifted away slowly, their earlier laughter long gone, their whispers now hushed. The show was over, but its echo lingered. And Harker? He was left standing alone, the truth replaying in his mind over and over. He had mocked a man for his car, and discovered too late that the man's worth wasn't in the car at all. It was in the badge he carried, and the dignity he never let go of. If you also believe that dignity doesn't lie in looks, click the subscribe button and get notified on many more stories like this.